Today, I'm super excited to have Hannah back with us. She's an e-commerce pro who knows all the ins and outs of running ads and making sales online. Hannah's got a strong background in media buying, and she's worked with a ton of e-commerce clients to run effective social media ads. You could call her an ads oracle and data master. She's here to share insights about her app, ProfitTree, which makes tracking finances for Etsy sellers a massive breeze, which is awesome because Etsy really sucks at it. If you've ever felt overwhelmed trying to figure out how much money you're actually making after costs and ads, ProfitTree is here to save the day. It works with print-on-demand services like Printify and Printful, so you can see exactly how much you're spending, how much you're earning, and where you can improve, all in one place. So let's dive in and see how ProfitTree can make your life way easier. Thank you for joining me today, Hannah. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Well, you're so welcome. It's been a minute, I think. We all been kind of going nuts with this Q1 craziness. I find there's like a mix of people out there. People are finding that they've done either everything right and are honestly trying to slow down sales or feeling overwhelmed because they thought they'd have some kind of reprieve. This is like the best case scenario problems. And then there's a bunch of people out there who are like, I'm burning ad money. I'm burning, this, that, and the other. And I have no idea how to get that momentum back, or I'm losing it sharply, but my ad spend is still through the roof and stuff. Right. And this is one of the things that I think that a lot of sellers just don't know, right? It's their finances going into Q1 after a potential Q4 that may have gone well for them. How was your Q4? Let's start there.
Yeah, our Q4 was good, but it's actually right now in Q1 that we're seeing like an all-time high actually. So we actually opted into one of Etsy's like sales program. There's site-wide sales. So we actually opted into one of those, and this Q1, this January actually is probably our biggest month yet. Our Q4 last year, we actually were on a decline of about 6% in sales in 2023 compared to 2023. And then now moving into Q1, like we're actually seeing that we're going up. And that's really just a product of that sale that we opted into. But we also have plans in place to actually try to fix that for our Etsy shop. Definitely a few things that we could be improving upon that we weren't really doing in 2024. We weren't doing it well. So yeah, there's always a way to fix low sales. Just remember, like everyone just remember that there's always a way to fix. And normally if sales are declining, there is a solution, right? And for us, like we definitely see like what we have to do. We've kind of hit a ceiling with our product line. We've fundamentally only been chasing one singular customer avatar for the last 3 years. And so what we need to do is we need to go into cross categories. We need to create lower ticket items to sell so we can attract new and different customers, because we've kind of hit a ceiling for our existing product line. It's basically the
kind of cast a wider net a little bit now.
Yes.
A little more laterally. Yeah. Great start. So why don't we get into a little bit of how you got into Etsy, or what led you into Etsy, and then what led you into what we're here to talk about is your awesome app of ProfitTree, right?
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I basically have like a kind of a different journey. I would say that most, like my background was always entrepreneurship. Like I've never really had a job or anything like that. But when I first got into the world of entrepreneurship, I was in a media buying world. So like I was just my first go at entrepreneurship was more on the media buying side, which at the time, all that meant was that you're running Facebook ads and Instagram ads on behalf of other businesses. And so I got somehow looped into only working with e-commerce people, because you get all different types of businesses, physical businesses run ads, lawyers, med spas, plastic surgery offices. And somehow I just ended up getting all e-commerce clients, and I didn't know anything about e-commerce. I just knew about how to run ads. And so when I started getting a lot of e-commerce clients, like one would refer another. And what you find, and this is very similar with Etsy, right? A lot of shops, contingent on the quality of your clients, they hire you to solve this problem for you that is traffic, and they want to solve that problem with ads. But then when you dive into their business, right, they're not really ready for ads because their website doesn't look good, or their images don't look good, or their value proposition isn't sexy enough, right? And so that's a very similar thing that Etsy sellers have, right? Like if you are an Etsy seller and you have never proven to ever make organic sales, right? And you've been live for months and months and months, like ads aren't going to solve your problem either, right? There's something else there that you have to fix first. And so long story short, when I was doing the media buying stuff, I was just not working with good clients. The clients I had was I had to solve like 10 other problems before they were even ready for ads. And so now they're actually hiring me to like run their business. And that's kind of how I learned e-commerce in a nutshell, by just learning from poor operators, I guess you could call it. And so then one of my clients actually had an Etsy shop and she was killing it on Etsy. And that was the first time I was introduced to Etsy. And so through one of my clients, and I saw how much easier it was and how much cheaper it was to acquire customers via Etsy ads versus Facebook ads or TikTok or Snapchat or any other Google, any other media buying platform. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, Etsy is not only easier, cheaper, and just easier. You can still make like the same or if not more amount of money in margin. And that's how I was introduced to Etsy. And so then after really hating my life for 2 years, trying to run ads for other people, I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to open up my own Etsy shop. And so that's what happened. I started my first shop and then I opened up a second shop with my my dad and my sister. And currently that is the shop that we have active and, we work on every day.
Awesome. I love how you were going on about, people advertising and burning money ultimately on listings that were not optimized, right? It's like why I've kind of, in the most layman way possible, I've always said, like, if you're going to suck in big, bold letters, right? If you're doing, imagine a text design, that way at least people will know in search results whether or not they like or don't like that design so that they don't click on it and then not buy it because they don't like it, which, tanking conversion rates. Or worst case, double-edged sword there is if you're paying for ads for them to click on it. Now you're spending the money to get the click for them to, decide that they hate your whatever it was because it was not presented properly or in a way that they could digest on first sight, right? Man, getting my feet wet with ads on Etsy in 2012 or 2013 was a crazy game because we were able to still control the cost per click. So that was super unique per listing, right? I don't know if you remember those days, but it was kind of nuts. But then they took it all away because they decided that they were going to make it easier for everyone, which ultimately just gave those of us who had figured out, somewhat how to control it. It just took the control away from us, right? So I, not knowing how to kind of control or do anything with that, I started, just burning money all of a sudden, right? Because I couldn't control which ads were spending, how much budget. Where now it's kind of like where you have to just pick the right listings to advertise, because if you don't, you can burn through budget, and then the listings that should get the allocated, the budget just don't get them, right? So
right, it's a very, very different game, and
yeah.
that when them changing the bid, like you being able to set your bid to what it is now, I want to say that is a product of it just becoming more competitive over time, where it's like, I mean, it was just one, more fair, but then two, it's just like as competition arises, just like in the Etsy search pages, in the media buying world, it's just like no one can give 10 cents clicks. Plus Etsy is like a platform they're trying to make money, right? And so if they control what the standard is or whatever, it's like they're also going to make more money. So that it's fundamentally a product of it becoming more competitive, and then obviously greed on Etsy side. But even still, I would say it's still the cheapest cost per quality click that you can get, that I've ever seen. So like, even if it's the cost per click is 27 cents, that same 27 cents potentially on Facebook is still not as hot as like an Etsy click. So that the overall amount that you end up paying is still cheaper. But yeah, unfortunately, those were the good old days.
So I'm going to get you to give us a walkthrough pretty much then, because like above and beyond, what we see a lot with new sellers is nobody knows how much money they're making until, they crunch some numbers. I've been, 7 months in, I calculated, I've lost money. ProfitTree makes it so much easier now to just kind of stay on top of everything at a glance. Like you don't even have to go in and crunch any numbers. It's all there done for you. You're not going to also waste time on duds, because you're going to talk to us about ads as well, right? And which ads how to know when to pull the plug, because everybody sees like a 2.5 or 3 ROAS, which is return on ad spend, and it might look, or a 4 even, and it might look like it's an awesome kind of ad or listing to continue to advertise, but it might not always be where you want to be allocating any budget. And you know what? You're going to basically help you to avoid burnout, because I know when it comes to tax time, it's like I used to have to allocate like an entire weekend just to go through all the numbers. And it was like this massive kind of thing that I would be more inclined to put off, right? Call it ADHD meets the worst kind of procrastination, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's really the goal. It's like, hopefully we're trying to make it as easy as possible. ProfitTree was designed out of solving my own problems. And, if we can help other sellers just to save time and that time, like your whole weekend there, that weekend can be spent making more listings, which is actually the way to make more money, so save time, make more money, optimize ads, basically.
Awesome. Yeah, because as entrepreneurs, I mean, knowing your finances is key, but ultimately, especially in the POD world or the Etsy world in general, we want to be making quality products. That's where our focus as makers, either digital or otherwise, should be, right?
100%, 100%. So basically, on the highest level, what we're looking at here is exactly what you just explained, which is how much profit am I actually making after all my product costs, after all my operating expenses. And as you know, with ads, your marketing cost percentage, or this purple piece of the pie here, media buying or marketing for your e-commerce business can make or break your profit. Like if you are not running ads properly, this could completely kill your green. That is your profit, right? And so it's important. It's just like not set and forget when you do run ads, because again, it can make or break your shop, right? In the beginning, actually, I don't think that breaking even is bad. I actually think that if you're running a shop in the beginning and it's not costing you money to collect data and get customers, I think that's actually winning, especially when you have no reviews, or maybe you're your first time at making designs. But eventually you want to increase this green part of the pie, increase your profit margin percentage as much as you can. And it's really a lot easier to do that when you have a holistic picture of your business and an honest picture of your business. And you're not just looking at like vanity metrics like views and revenue and clicks, right? When you're actually saying, okay, these are my true costs, this is my profit, right? And you can see all these different pieces of the pie, then you can actually focus on optimizing the different pieces of your pie so that you can increase the most important piece, that is the profit piece. And so, yeah, basically, I think one of the things that we wanted to do here today is kind of go over, the value of ads. Like if you're somebody that has proven to have made organic sales, or you just have done the research, you've made competitive listings and you want to go ahead and put ad money behind your listings right away, then what we really want to look at is one of the most important pieces of the pie, which is your ad cost percentage. And unfortunately, when you go to run ads for the first time or invest in marketing for your business for the first time, no matter what business you're doing, you don't know what this cost is going to be. The only thing that we do know is that the only thing that matters is that I need to make sure that with this marketing spend, I'm actually making more money than I otherwise wouldn't have if I didn't spend this $43,000, right, in that year. Then if it's not actually making me more profit, then there's really no point in running ads, right? And so the goal for all Etsy sellers is to build a product line and build a shop that is so competitive that when you do put ads on, not only do your listings financially make more sense after ad spend, but you're actually making more profit. And when you run an Etsy shop with your Etsy ads budget maxed out to the max that it can go, and you're yielding more profit, you're building the most competitive business that you can build on the Etsy platform, because there's only two ways to make more money on Etsy. Going back to number one, which is launching more things to sell. But if you're a shop that has maybe even been running ads for maybe like the last 2 months only at say like $20 a day, right? And you're already clearing a healthy profit as is, you putting that $20 a day to $200 a day is truly your lowest hanging fruit to increasing your sales, because you spending $20 a day to the same data sample of products at $200 a day doesn't mean that this 14% is going to go to 50% if it's the same data sample of products that you're running ads to. So if you're someone watching this and you have even been spending a little bit of money for a good data sample of time, anything over a month is a pretty good data sample of time for ads, and you have locked in a healthy ad cost percentage where you're clearing a good profit, like a target profit for print on demand, it's normally between, I would say, 15 and 20%, I would say, then truly your lowest hanging fruit to just increasing your sales is just increasing your budget, because it's the way that Etsy charges you is something called PPC, which means pay per click, which means that you actually had to earn that click in that search page. So you putting your budget from 20 to 200, your listing is still being shown to the same quality, the same data sample of people at $20 a day versus $200 a day. And so that's why, again, if you already have been spending anything, $10, $5 for at least a month, and your ad cost percentage is healthy, just continuing to increase it is all it's going to do is increase your revenue and then increase your profit. So that is just the first thing.
Is there a way to figure out, for people who don't know or who haven't touched, plugged into ProfitTree, for example, or integrated, how would you otherwise figure out your operating profit, including your ad spend and everything else, right? Like you're doing it all manually. Is there a quick formula, or is it all just taking, the gross revenue and then subtracting all the elements all the way through?
So without ProfitTree, there's two big variable expenses. The first variable expense, well, there's two, right? The two biggest various variable expenses in e-commerce is your product costs and then your ad cost percentage, right? You kind of can ballpark what your cost of goods, your product costs are when you're making your sale prices. Because what normal people do is like, okay, I know that this phone case cost me $5 and I'm going to sell for 15. So 5 divided by 15 is whatever percentage, and that's my average cost of goods sold. But what ProfitTree does primarily before ads optimization is we're a COGS management. COGS means cost of goods sold, so your product cost. And so this $90,000 here represents what actually sold in this year for my cost, my product cost. And so this is the first core functionality of ProfitTree, is getting you this percentage. So how much of my net sales was product cost? And then once you know that product cost percentage, and then obviously we know our transaction fees are about 6.5, our listing fees are that 20 cents every time that gets renewed. And then our payment processing fees is about 3% plus 25 cents per transaction, right?
Yep.
Then after we know our profit before marketing, then we can determine what's a good or bad ad cost percentage. So without ProfitTree, you can do this. You just have to do it in like spreadsheets. You have to go export all of your products that sold for the year and take that, divide that by your total net sales. But luckily with ProfitTree, we do it really easily because we integrate with Printify and Printful. So we do it for you. But if you do have a way to get that cost of goods sold amount, I mean, you can do it manually. It's just a very much more automated process this way. Let's just put it that way. So once you get that first variable expense, right? So you can see here, the cost of goods sold for the year was 30%, right? We can then say, okay, we have this much pie left over to go to our ad cost percentage, right? And so like we ran some numbers here, and just for 2023, like what would have happened if we did not spend 14% of this green in Etsy ads in 2023. And so we ran some numbers. I can actually present this little case study example here. We have a little mini 6-figure case study here. So here we go. Yeah, in 2023, we spent $43,000, and that after our ads, we still made $107,000 profit after our cost of goods sold, right? But that $40,700 and this $2,100 spend here, this was on offsite ads, this one was on onsite ads, right? That revenue that it made us was over $150,000. So if we did not spend that $43,000, our revenue would have dropped to $145,000 if we subtracted out what we made from the ads, from that $43,000. And so that means our profit would have dropped from $107,000 to only $72,000.
Right.
So there would have been a minimum loss of profit in 2023 of $34,000. And again, that's a minimum loss of profit because we were also running ads in 2022. And so we were getting ads to carts, we were getting reviews, we were getting photo reviews that were then converting organic traffic coming in. So 34,000 is the minimum profit loss. It's probably closer to, like, my guess, 40 or even 50,000, because there's so much that doesn't get attributed to ads that then converts organically because of previous purchases from ads,
Right.
or repeat buyers and stuff like that.
That's one thing I think people like just overlook, right? Is the number one driver of sales is ultimately sales velocity. And for that to happen is keeping people clicking and ordering and converting on your products, right? So I mean, that number at a baseline of 34, almost 35,000 is, I mean, that could easily be almost double.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like you said, like there's just a snowball effect of benefits that happens when you have more volume coming in, right? Word of mouth, repeat buyers. The attribution window on ads is only 30 days. So they could click now, but they don't buy for 3 months from now when Christmas comes around. So many different factors. It's just kind of like, I kind of explain it like, if you're doing print on demand, we know that personalization is a huge benefit. Like, you know, on some level, I feel like, I don't know if you agree with this, actually, you're the print on demand person, but on some level, I feel like most people should be offering personalization. Do you agree? Maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't know.
to a certain degree. Like, yeah, some elements. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you've got a a super passionate niche, there's no case that personalization will not help.
Okay.
Put it that way.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good answer. Yeah. So, like, parallel to that, I would say, like, for every Etsy seller, like, if you want to scale as much as you like, a shop that has their Etsy ad budget maxed out to $1,000 a day, even though it's not going to spend $1,000 a day, which we'll explain what that means later. But a shop that has their Etsy budget maxed out versus a shop that doesn't invest in ads, it's just they're playing in a completely different game.
Yep.
Like, one's competing on a whole different level. Their revenue is going to be a way different experience. Just, it's a whole different shop, basically. So, you know, any competitive Etsy seller that really, really wants to scale their shop to the max, right? Etsy ads is the truest, lowest hanging fruit, right? Like, some people say, oh, what about social media? What about Pinterest and all that stuff? And the most I've ever seen Pinterest or like social media, which, by the way, if you're so good at social media that you actually know how to make sales from it, I wouldn't be driving the traffic to an Etsy shop. I would drive it to my own website or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bulk of your sales is going to come from organic or paid.
Yeah, I would say if you're that good, you could just open your own marketing agency, right? Because you would be in that kind of demand.
Exactly. So how do we achieve this then, right? Like, that becomes the next question. So if we know that at 14% overall for our shop, we're making more money, then this 14% can then guide us. And obviously, you don't have to have a whole year's of sales data to do that same calculation that we just did, right? So, like, but we know that 14%, you know, we're making more profit than we otherwise would not. And so what does that mean in terms of optimization for your actual listing? So if we come into the advertisement tab in ProfitTree, we have this beautiful column here called tacos, which is the total advertising cost of sale. And all this is comparing what the ad spent versus the total sales of the listing. And the beautiful thing about the total sales here, and why this is a true holistic picture of the quality of the clicks that the listing attracts, is because we're analyzing what the listing spent and what all the different revenue that came out of that listing, whether it was from paid or organic, right? And so what's misleading about ROAS is that sometimes, especially in print on demand, especially in low ticket digital downloads, is your ROAS almost always looks bad when you look at what the ad spent versus what the ad made you, right? But we don't want to look at ROAS, because when sometimes ROAS looks bad, tacos is actually good. The ad cost percentage is actually really healthy when you analyze it in this way, when you analyze it against all the revenue that it came out. So if someone clicked on the listing, this is showing whether it was organic or not, right? This is the revenue that came out of that click, of that quality of the click. And so now you're getting a holistic picture of any type of click. They've had to find you through this listing, whether they bought off this listing or they bought somewhere else in your shop. The sale would not have happened if they didn't click on this listing, right? And so this total sales, or this total sales here, is basically showing you what happened when someone clicked on this listing. And so when you analyze it in that way and you get your ad cost percentage or your tacos percentage, essentially now all we have to do is, okay, are we hitting our target profit goals or our target tacos, right? So 14%, we know for sure we're making more profit. If anything is going over 20%, we could investigate a little bit further and see if we're still hitting at least target profit goals. So for us, right, we want to make at least a 30% profit, right? So this tacos actually looks kind of high, like 20%. But then when we look at what the profit margin percentage is before ads here, it's at 58%. So this listing is still clearing a 38% profit after ad spend. And so I would actually keep that one on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it's only costing you 20%. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so even if like this wasn't target ROAS for you, right? Like the ROAS could look bad, but your tacos could be healthy. You would not want to kill that listing and kill that momentum on that listing. Whereas like you have something like this, where the ROAS looks bad and the tacos look bad, like this is clear as day, we would want to turn it off. Yeah. But this is specifically very useful for people in print on demand and for the digital downloads, because like I said, your ROAS almost always looks bad. But then when you look at what's happening collectively in terms of total sales, you're like, wait a second, my tacos is good. And this is the same thing. This is the same.
I was just because that's the piece you miss on Etsy proper, is that red one, the listing organic revenue, right? We don't have a clear way to see that snapshot in Etsy. It just does. It's just not there.
you actually can't even calculate it yourself, because you trust me, when we were building this, we were trying to figure out, you can't isolate the purple, the green from the red there. You can't isolate organic sale. There's no way to actually get it. The reason we can get it is because we integrate with it. So we know all of your order IDs, we know the spend, and that's why we can get it. So to get to even try to calculate your tacos or your ad cost percentage on the listing level, it's not possible. Yeah. But you don't have to do that to yourself anyway. So you can just come in here and look at tacos basically. Or one of the most commonly asked questions that we get is like, Hannah, how much should I spend before I decide if we're hitting our target tacos or not? So we like to spend, our threshold of uncomfortable spend is around $40 to $60, but that's because our sale prices are high. So if you're someone doing print on demand, maybe you want your answer faster. So you would want to come in here and sort it by who's spending the most, and then quickly look at target tacos. So if you want your answer after you've spent $20, because relative to your other listings that you have spending, you're getting some hitting target tacos really fast, right? Then maybe after $20, you know that you've collected enough data and you should be able to make a decision, right? So
is there a timeline that is factored in here as well? Or is it just the budgetary amount, like however long it takes you to burn through that 40 to 60?
I personally don't care about the time variable as much anymore. I really only care about how much I'm spending.
Okay, that's great.
That's where your money is.
That's good insight, because we've always said give it at least 30 days. That's always been the norm, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would maybe want to look at, I would say it really comes down to spend, because it's like, okay, after $20, like if after $20, if our tacos are bad, and then maybe if I go into the listing in an incognito window and I check add to carts, like for example, let's just do this one here. So in an incognito window on Etsy, right? So this has no add to carts. So if this had an add to cart badge of say 20 and we weren't hitting target tacos, and it spent that $20 for the first time, then I would maybe leave it on, because there's clear signs of momentum. But if it's spent my threshold of uncomfortability and it's not hitting target tacos, then I would say, let's go ahead and turn it off, if that makes sense.
So how would you then determine which listings, like ultimately, where does that threshold come? Is it at the 50-50 marker? Is it a level of comfort? Because sometimes even losing money on ads, what would be deemed losing money, can still help if you're breaking even, right? Even though the numbers look absolutely terrible.
Yeah. So for you, like say breaking even is okay for you. Like you don't care about breaking even, right? So what you would do is you would look at, okay, my ad cost percentage is at 16%. And then you come in here and you say, okay, well, my profit margin here before ads is 43%. So let's just pretend that 16% actually said 40%, right? And this is at 43% profit before ads. So you know that this listing is about breaking even, but you don't really care because you just launched your store and you just want to get reviews. So in that case, you would leave it on. So these thresholds are something that you determine based off of your own profit goals, right? And so maybe because you're so new, you don't mind breaking even, or even maybe even losing a little bit of money just to get the review, right? But then over time, as you start getting reviews and momentum, right, relative to your other listings, you have a bunch of listings that are making you great return, right? In which case, it's now you want to trim the fat, where like breaking even isn't good enough anymore. So you're going to turn off those listings that aren't hitting your target profit and let the dollars spent only go to the listings that are yielding you the best return or the best target ad cost percentage. Does that make sense? It does.
So if I was brand new and look, to ProfitTree and to even POD, we'll talk POD because most of my audience is POD for a minute. What would you say? Let's say I'm, my profit margin on a product is 35%. And if at what point or where would the tacos and ROAS be, or the tacos in general, in terms of deciding how much budget to allocate? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So a couple of things there. In POD, if you talk to the top print on demand sellers, like yourself, I'm sure, Stephen Chin, like all these people, for print on demand, obviously I don't do print on demand, but for print on demand specifically, your target ad cost, I'm already going to tell you, has to be less than like 14%, right? So if you're already sitting at 35% operating profit before ad spend, to still clear a healthy profit of like 20%. Say over 20%, you really got to try to keep, what is it? Yeah, you got to keep this down to like as low as possible, like ideally lower than 10%. So that's number one. So that means that when you're analyzing your tacos, like you really want to be only giving your money to the listings that are hitting 9%, 9%, 5%, 6, you know what I mean?
That's a
And focusing on those, making sure that those dollars going in are only going to those listings. And then another part of your question was like, how much should you be spending? Was that the question? So
yeah. Well,
like how much
I was just thinking in terms of dollars, but in relative, you're kind of speaking to it. So you want to stay less than 15, like you want to at least at the end of the day have a 20% kind of profit margin, right? So if you're having
return.
35% operating budget,
Yeah.
then ad cost should be less than 50.
If you're really new at print on demand, I would say even clearing only a 10 to 15% is good in the beginning just to get the momentum, right? But then as you trim the fat, you get more best-selling listings, right? Then you really want to, I mean, in most businesses, you are really trying to clear at least 18, 20% profit, right? So, but in the beginning, it's not really about making money. It's just about getting reviews and getting as many, your product in the hands of as many people as possible, right? And then, after, your first, 100 sales or whatever, then, okay, we really, really want to be strict with this ad cost percentage, and get this down as low as possible. And then in terms of how much you invest, right, like on the dollar amount that you're actually sending your budget to, right, the idea is that once you start going up, you don't go back down. Like, so if you go up to $5 and then $10 and then $20, you don't go back to $10, right? You just continue to go up because it's a proportional scaling thing. So as you're hedging up your ad budget, right? If you had your budget at $20 a day again for over 30 days and it's at 12%, green light to go up. If it's not hitting your target tacos, then maybe we need to trim the fat on some of the listings that aren't, yielding us the greatest return, basically. And we see which ones aren't, like, that are basically eating up our budget and not hitting our target. But
that said, is there an amount that we should stop at when we are increasing our bid, or is the goal always to spend to increase the budget allocation as much as possible on Etsy?
I mean, if it's yield, it kind of becomes like an ATM. Like if you know that you give it at $1 and it's going to give you back $3, why would you not want to give it $3 instead of $1? You know what I mean? And so it's just getting that formula, locking in that formula, and that gives you the confidence to up it, up it, up it. I mean, some of the biggest myths I hear is like, oh, well, I just turn it on for the holidays and then I turn it off, or, yes, for seasonal products for sure. But if you have evergreen products, like, no, the amount of traffic and the amount of clicks you're paying for is proportional to the amount of traffic that's coming in. So your budget might spend more in December, but if the traffic dies in January, then you should be spending less in January because you're getting less clicks. You have to earn the click. So it's just the idea that, oh, I'm only spending during the holidays or something like that. That's just like a flawed. It's not a real thing. It's not actually doing anything beneficial for you, right? Once you get your ad budget to 1,000, you're never going to go backwards if your percentages make sense, right? Like if it's actually making you a profit. And now another thing that potentially could happen, especially if you're new and you're not really good at making great listings in the beginning, is, well, none of my listings are profitable. Well, it's cool that you spent the money to collect that data, right? But that just means that it's not that the ads don't work. It just means that there's something wrong with your listings, right? Or it's too expensive to acquire a customer. And it's your goal to feed things into the top of the funnel that do financially actually make sense with ads on. So actually,
that's another big thing you're kind of alluding to there, is our egos, right? Like getting out of our own way that way. Just because we think it's beautiful doesn't mean anybody else on the planet does. And that was one of as a graphic designer, as an artist, airbrushing, all of that. That was one of the biggest pills for me to swallow. Is not what I want. It's not what I'm, romanticizing this whole thing about. It's literally, if I'm not making what somebody wants or what is in demand, I'm going to get clicks. I'm going to burn budget. I will not make sales, right?
But now all of your listings sell, and you're the master at design, and everyone should listen to Jay because he is the true design master when it comes to print on demand. And actually, like I said, I need you to come into my community because I suck at teaching design because I'm just not that person. I am
happy to. We had our own print shop, and my wife sold her own handmade stuff too. So for a long time,
The only other thing I was going to say to your point, okay, like if you go to market and say you go crazy, you're like, I'm going to put on ads on all my designs before, just go really hard in the beginning, right? So the Etsy ads algorithm is very similar to the regular listing algorithm, right? So like the goal is that we have a consistent Etsy ads or Etsy listing launch process. So you're always launching new listings on a recurring basis, right? Like that never ends. That's just a part of the growth of a shop, right? 2 ways to make money: get your ads up and launch more things to sell, right? And out of 100 listings that you launch, right, there's only going to be some that make it into this algorithm or the waterfall that brings it down into the pool of winners. So this pool of winners resembles the listings that sell well organically, right? So if you throw 100 things and publish 100 listings, there's only going to be a portion that the algorithm likes and gives views and clicks and purchases to, right? And that's just part of it. Maybe 20%, their top 20% of your products, there's going to be a percent, maybe it's 20%, I don't know, it depends how good you are at making listings, that actually sell, right? And so this is also true with Etsy ads. So the same pool that exists for when you publish listings is the same. There's a smaller pool that lives under this pool that says, okay, out of all these ones that sell well organically, there's another pool that you're trying to get these ones into, which is, this looks like a bigger pool. It technically should be a smaller pool, but it's a little confusing. But basically, this pool says, okay, these not only sell well organically, but they also sell well with ads, and they financially make sense with ads. So just because something sells well organically doesn't mean it's going to make sense financially with ads in terms of tacos, and that's okay. If something sells well organically, but it doesn't financially make sense with tacos, that's okay. You turn off that ad and let that listing make sales over here, and you make the full profit margin, right, without ads, right? And this was something that happened to us in our own shop, where basically we had a whole bunch of excess fabric. And so we tried to make all this like wall art out of this extra fabric. And the listing got crazy clicks and like good organic sales. But when we put ad money behind it, after you factor in costs and stuff like that, it doesn't make sense financially. We were like breaking even. We were breaking even on the wall art, and the wall art was very difficult to make. So it's just not worth it with ads on, right? So what does that mean then? That means, okay, everyone hated our wall art. What else can we make? And so then it's like, we're focusing on product opportunities where financially it does make sense after ads, right? And so if you're launching things and they make good organic sales, again, don't get upset if it financially you're not hitting target tacos. That's okay. Let it make organic sales. But the goal is to keep feeding things at the top to then find listings that do make sense financially with ads. And so then you have this bottom pool, this pool obviously getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But then obviously you want this pool to get bigger and bigger and bigger as well. And so that is how you build these moats around your business that make you so competitive, because you're trying to get, obviously this pool bigger, but more importantly, the pool of winners that make sense financially and are yielding you more profit bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can only do that by having, the top of your funnel or your launch process happening on a consistent basis.
That's a perfect analogy, a perfect visual analogy for sure.
But yeah, that's basically everything when it comes to ads, and the overall goal.
So this is largely what I'm gathering dependent on the cost of goods sold, obviously. And then that brings me to a question of SKUs. So a lot of us using print-on-demand companies have, if you either created your listings in Etsy first and then attach them behind the scenes, or you're starting from scratch and you're pushing from your POD to Etsy and you've already integrated with ProfitTree, then the SKUs are going to automatically attach, I assume. But what happens if now you were a print-on-demand store, let's say using a company that is not Printful or Printify, and you want to come over to Printify now, and you don't want to have to recreate everything because it sounds like a disaster?
So the way that ProfitTree right now integrates with Printify and Printful. And actually now that SKU problem, we used to have an actual SKU problem where everyone with personalized orders, basically you didn't publish with a SKU, right? You would make an Etsy listing, wouldn't publish it on Etsy by Etsy, didn't have a SKU. And then when you got an order, you would then decide, I'm going to go fulfill it with Printify. And so ProfitTree previously was having issues because we were correlating everything via the SKU. But now we don't have that issue anymore because we're routing the product costs in other ways, basically. So even if you don't have a SKU, but we saw that you either published it or fulfilled it with Printify or Printful, we can get the cost and there's no issues. Some issues that we do run into is exactly what you said, which is other print-on-demand providers. So if you're using Gelato, if you're using some like My Designs or something like that, right? Those get treated because we don't know it's a print-on-demand product. It wasn't fulfilled or published with Printify or Printful. It was another print-on-demand provider like Printed Mint or something. Those products get treated as handmade products, and you can still add the cost to it. It's just a more painful manual process. But if you have your listings in Etsy and they're actually handmade, which all your people are mostly print-on-demand, but if they are Printify or Printful, you basically just do the integration.
Awesome.
And
so if I was
that's it.
using one of
We
those
don't
other
have any
companies and I
issues.
flipped the switch and decided to, not change my Etsy store, but just integrate now with a Printful or Printify, and I process some orders.
The future orders, the orders that were processed with Printify or Printful are good. The past orders that were fulfilled with a
No
different print provider.
Right. Yeah. So,
are
but
not
going
good.
forward, you can start to
No bueno.
track everything automatically. That's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Thank you.
That-
We are trying. We are trying. We basically built ProfitTree trying to like serve multiple different users. Like you have digital downloads, print on demand, and physical goods. And so what we discovered is everyone has different problems in terms of COGS management. So it's definitely very complex. And the complexity with POD people is that like their listings are just fronts, and then you can figure out, you can go to fulfill it with Printify, Gluten, like however you want to fulfill it, because the list, there's no actual real product behind the listing.
Right. And even
where you're going to get it.
Even with like a Printify, for example, if a Monster Digital or a SwiftPod are out of stock in this particular SKU, then I got to use somebody else like a Shirt Monkey or something like under the same umbrella. It's a potentially completely different cost to me, right?
Right. It is. It is. And so, yeah, we can only get better. We're going to try to integrate with all of them. But for now, we got you.
Yeah, no, that's
Printify
great.
and
I'm just saying, even under the Printify umbrella, if I use one or two normally and they're out of stock, I have to go over here.
Yeah. Right.
Pretty incredible.
Yes.
This is awesome.
Yep.
I'm stoked now because this is going to take a lot of the guesswork out. I just looking at my dashboard and my ad cost was 23.8%. So I need to trim some fat.
What time period was that? So this is actually really
that was last quarter.
Big of a time period.
Q4.
Okay, last quarter.
Also at a time where
Yeah,
I'd be more inclined to burn a little extra budget just to keep the organic sales as pumped as possible. Right?
Just curious, what is it at for the entire year for the last year? Because sometimes.
Let me see. Good question.
Last
year is 1% less, so 22 point.
Okay, so yeah, it's pretty much holding consistent. So that's good. So yeah, so now that you have that data, I mean, it makes it very, pretty easy. So you're probably still clearing, I don't know, maybe like a 14% profit, somewhere around 15 maybe. Actually no, if you're at 35, but now it's like you have clear data on basically, okay, when we go to that ads tab, all right, which ones are.
Yeah, because without costs, I'm a little bit higher than that because I charge a lot. Yeah, so I'm about 27% still after the ad costs, but I can trim some fat and make a lot more money is what I'm seeing.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. And that's another thing that I was going to say, like one thing with the print on demand where ProfitTree also becomes really valuable is like if you're charging, like you're obviously charging great prices and you're still making your margins, right? But for some people, they want to, when they launch their store, they do that pricing strategy where their pricing is really low. And then you forget to go up and hedge your price. And because we have a product and the listing report, you can see, oh, wait a second, I forgot I need to increase my price on that listing. And ProfitTree will show you that your profit margins are not high because you forgot it's been 3 months and you haven't.
And this is great because I need the visuals, I need the pie charts, I need just like with eRank's new kind of their whole new look now. Loving every second of that too. It's just more visual. It felt so much like I was looking at spreadsheets before, and I am not that person, right? I'm left-handed, right brain, and I need the colors.
Yeah, we need colors. So hopefully we'll get you more colors as time goes on.
This has been great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. And Hannah, you said you were going to give us, everybody watching, a month free of ProfitTree. So thank you for that. We'll leave that link down below as well. Thank you so much, Hannah. It's been a pleasure having you as always. And can't wait to do this again. Talk shop something.